the skin usually is not kind of rosy red. Like I look at you right now and you've got some pink to your skin, there's some rosiness to it. That's a sign of vascularity, of good blood supply. Now, sometimes it's too rosy red, and that's a sign of inflammation.
What are the top foods that can accelerate the aging process that people should generally try to avoid or at least reduce their consumption of every day?
So there are two things that we can definitely talk about, but really what it comes down to is what causes aging of the skin. And so the two foods I would focus on really as far as eliminating are going to be the foods that create inflammation and the foods that create oxidation, basically free radical rich foods. And so when you talk about inflammation, it would be sugar. Sugar really is the big cause of inflammation of our skin. And then when you're talking about free radicals and oxidation, that's going to be overly processed foods, uber processed foods, ultra processed foods. They're actually filled with free radicals, and free radicals / oxidation and inflammation, chronic inflammation, are two of the main causes of aging of our skin.
Oh man. So let's unpack this sugar bit a little bit, because obviously when you eat a piece of whole fruit, you're ingesting sugar, right? To some degree. All plant foods contain some concentration of sugar.
Exactly.
So are we talking avoiding those, or is there a certain type of sugar that we should be looking out for?
Well, really, when you look at sugar and aging, it's two processes that you want to consider. And so the first one is going to be glycation. And this is something you've talked about on your podcast before, but a lot of people don't realize is that glycation, even though it may be bad for certain parts of your body, what it's really bad for is your skin. So when we look at sugar, when you consume sugar, sugar can actually bond to the collagen and the elastin in your skin. Now, our skin is composed about 70 to 80% of collagen, and that's what causes our skin to be nice and tight and firm when we get younger. But as we get older, really starting as early as our mid-20s, we start to lose about 1% of the thickness of collagen every year.
Wow.
And women, when they go through menopause, that goes up to 2% a year. And that's why when you see some women and they're, let's say, in their 70s and 80s, sometimes their skin is so tissue paper thin because that collagen has just been completely thinned out. Now, when you consume sugar, the sugar can then bond to the collagen, and that collagen in the skin, it's like I describe it like the logs of a log cabin. And when you're younger, those logs are nice and tight and they're strong. But as you get older, those logs start to fall apart. They start to fray and become basically damaged. Now, what sugar does to it is it takes those logs that are starting to fall apart and it bonds to them, causing them to become even more kinked or even more fallen apart, and prevents them from getting back to normal again. And those sugar protein collagen hybrids are called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, very appropriately titled.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they know about glycation, but they don't know necessarily that this is something that can also age your skin as well. And it's a very direct correlation between eating sugar and then getting that aging. And then the second process that we're looking at is chronic inflammation. And so chronic sugar spikes can cause chronic insulin spikes, something that you've been great with explaining to people, and how you can get these chronic insulin spikes, and then that can cause chronic inflammation with insulin resistance and all of that as well. So if I were to pick one group of foods to avoid, sugar would probably be at the top of the list. But the second one then would be the ultra-processed foods, because those then will contribute to oxidation and free radicals.
Yeah, ultra-processed foods are like a very big problem these days. I believe something like 73% of the U.S. food supply is now ultra-processed.
Yeah.
What is an ultra-processed food for somebody who's never heard that term before? What are these kinds of foods?
So you and Sean have gone over it and explained it really, really well on one of your old podcasts. But essentially, it is food that has been so altered that it doesn't really resemble what it was to start out with, So there are certain foods like I grew up in Michigan, but my parents grew up in Korea. And so the foods that we eat, you can tell what those foods are. So what rice is, they put some meat, some vegetables. These are foods that, yes, they're processed because they are cooked, but they still resemble their original shape. Ultra-processed foods are foods that have been so changed, and really it can be even molecularly so changed that you don't even know necessarily what it came from. And now they're adding all these other, parts into it with colors and additives and preservatives. What we do find is that the ultra-processed foods do have a high amount of free radicals. Free radicals are those compounds that create oxidation. That's one of the agers of our body. And what a lot of people don't know is that, although you can get free radicals by normal metabolism, just being alive, when you add more free radicals to your body, like by eating overly processed foods, you can kind of overload the body's defenses against it. And so just another cause of aging of our skin.
Very interesting. Yeah, I like that you brought up this idea of balance, that eternal tug of war that each of our bodies is undergoing on a constant basis, right?
Yeah.
Between oxidation and its, our hardwired processes that fight against oxidation, those sort of antioxidant properties that our bodies, and chemical compounds that our bodies produce naturally, endogenously.
Yeah, and I mean, we normally produce free radicals. That is a normal byproduct of just being alive. It's those added free radicals that can really attack your body. Like I said, with the diet, smoking, pollution, there's so many different causes of these free radicals. And this just, used to think, anti-aging scientists at one point thought that that was the only reason why we aged. It was mainly due to free radicals. Well, we know now that it's multifactorial. That's just one of those things. And I think really the big picture of this is that 20% of our aging is in our genes, but 80% is what you do. And it's that whole concept of epigenetics. And I think a lot of people don't realize, they say, well, I know when I'm 50, I'm going to look this way. When I'm 60, I'm going to look this way. My dad looked that way, so I'm going to look that way, or my mom looked that way. And actually, that's not true. Like, you can control how quickly you age. You can control how you look as you get older, and you don't have to have plastic surgery or Botox or any of that type of stuff.
And to hear a plastic surgeon actually to assert that is very empowering.
Yeah, I mean, I went through all the traditional training. I did 3 years of general surgery. I did my medical school. I got an MD. I did 2 years of plastic surgery. I did a fellowship out here in Beverly Hills. And even through all of that, it took me a long time of practice to realize that what I was taught was actually wrong. So when we go through surgical training, the idea, there's certain sayings that we have that we believe in. Number one, to cut is to cure. Number two, you can only heal with cold steel. And really, number three is this idea that your goal as a surgeon is to bring people to the operating room.
That's insane.
That's the goal. And when you look at surgical training, the bigger the operation, the more prestigious that it is. And so when you go through training, let's say you go through general surgery training, which most of us surgeons, that's kind of where we start. The pinnacle of success in that training is called the Whipple. The Whipple is a huge cancer operation, can take 10 hours. And if you are so lucky and so good that you can scrub into a Whipple, that's a privilege. In plastic surgery, that operation is probably the facelift. People may trust almost anybody to do a little lipo on them, but if you're going to be cutting their face open and doing a facelift, you know that they're going to do their research.
Yeah.
And so for many years, Max, in my practice, I gauged the level of success by how many facelifts that I had on my schedule.
Whoa.
And I thought, okay, if I have this many facelifts, then I've got to be doing pretty well. And I reached this point in practice where I had a 1-year waiting list. I had all these people flying in from around the country to have surgery with me. And I had a patient who had a horrible complication. And it was not her fault. It wasn't my fault. Just sometimes bad stuff happens. And that sent me into a tailspin and eventually got me into realizing that the goal of being a surgeon should not be to bring people to the operating room. The goal should be the opposite. It's how can I keep people out of the operating room? And that's what sent me on the path towards the book and kind of the direction that I've gone.
Incredible. And you now have a massive social media following, huge on YouTube. You mentioned earlier that when this collagen, this reduction in collagen, or the damage that occurs to collagen over the course of aging, leads to this paper-thin skin. You've seen skin from all angles, right? Because you're cutting it open, stretching. Is there a quality of a person's skin that might indicate to you whether or not they've lived a healthy lifestyle, consumed a healthy diet?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can tell when somebody comes in my office within 10 seconds of looking at them, whether they're a smoker. I can tell, in general, what type of diet they've had. And wow. I mean, it really is very, very obvious.
What are the telltale signs of somebody who's lived an unhealthy lifestyle? Yeah,
so you can see they have the skin usually is not kind of rosy red. Like I look at you right now and you've got some pink to your skin. There's some rosiness to it. That's a sign of vascularity, of good blood supply. Now, sometimes it's too rosy red, and that's a sign of inflammation. So it really is kind of the pinkness to the skin. When people have led a kind of a hard lifestyle, you can tell because their skin usually is, the color is grayish, more grayish, and it doesn't have, other than let's say spotting, which is different, it doesn't necessarily have some of the gradients that you would see in somebody who's got healthy skin. You know, somebody who's got healthy skin, you can see they may have a little pink of the rosy of the cheeks, and then it turns a little less pink. Whereas somebody who has had a difficult lifestyle, it's kind of all the same color. And I think part of it is lack of vascularity. You're not getting as much blood supply because your tissues have literally been damaged.
Wow.
Other times you can see it by the wrinkles too. You know, where there are studies that show that, very specific studies. There was one study that looked at people who had high intakes of vitamin C, and they actually had less wrinkles than somebody who had lower intakes of vitamin C. And so there's some very direct correlations there that you can see.
That's incredible. And vitamin C is directly related to our ability to synthesize collagen, right?
Exactly. And it goes back to like our middle school science classes when they talked about scurvy and those people who would go like on those ships on like long voyages, and then they'd run out of fresh produce and they would get scurvy. They'd have lesions inside their mouth and all of that. Vitamin C is absolutely essential in the production of collagen. But on top of that, it's also important as an antioxidant, like we mentioned earlier, to fight free radicals and oxidation.
In your book, you're actually, it seems like from what I've read, you're a huge fan of the supplementation of collagen, which is a sort of controversial, you know, there's this belief held by many that when you consume collagen supplements, they're broken down into their constituent amino acids. There's no real way to guarantee that it's going to actually encourage the formation of collagen in your body, but there's actually research that suggests the contrary, right?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. There's this, you know, on TikTok, and I've got a big TikTok following. I find it kind of fun. There's a doctor on there who's a cardiologist, and he's also some type of nutritionist. And he's got this big bushy beard, and he's very matter-of-fact about nutrition. And he made this video a couple years ago saying, you know, collagen supplements are BS, and if you really want to have collagen, just get some gelatin. It's the same thing. And very matter-of-fact about it. And I thought, he hasn't looked at the science. And interestingly enough, literally like a month and a half ago or something like that, I saw another video of his. Same thing, starts off collagen BS and all that. And then he actually takes his hand and swipes the video away, and he goes, I was wrong.
Whoa.
Collagen supplements do work. I have done the research, and they are real. I was wrong. And I thought, oh my gosh, here's this guy who comes across as being like, he is the final authority. You know, this is how he's got this low voice, and I'm the final authority. And he admitted he was wrong about collagen. So,
wow. I respect that he admitted that he was wrong, but in general, I don't like people that on social media, they promote this like brand of themselves as being the end all be all arbiters of scientific truth.
Exactly. Yeah. So so really when you look at it, okay, what is the argument against collagen supplements not working? They say it's a large protein, which is true, and that if you ingest it, it will get broken down into peptides. And how do you know that that's going to improve the collagen of your skin? So the key is a couple of things. The first thing, if you're going to take a collagen supplement, you want to make sure it's hydrolyzed collagen peptides, because essentially you take that large collagen protein and you break it down into small amino acids, single amino acids, or peptides, which are combinations of 1, 2, 3 amino acids together. And that is done on purpose so that you can actually absorb it. So they know that. They know it's a big protein, and they're not just going to give you collagen, they're going to give you the peptides so you can absorb it.
Yeah.
So when you actually look at the studies, it was a meta-analysis back in 2021, looking at around 1,400 people. 90 days they took of a hydrolyzed collagen supplement, and they found a statistically significant improvement in wrinkles, in hydration, and elasticity of the skin. And this is a meta-analysis, so it's a combination of multiple studies. There have been studies that they've even done prospective randomized controlled trials where they put somebody on collagen, and then 2 months later, they do a biopsy of their skin. And they find that the skin has a higher concentration of collagen in it, that the skin is thicker. So I don't know what else you need.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's a segment of traditional medicine, and hey, I grew up in it, that is just plain anti-supplements. Doesn't matter what supplement it is, they're anti-supplements. And they're looking for reasons to say that this doesn't work. Full disclosure, I have my own collagen supplement that we sell through my online store, Youn Beauty, and that's our top selling supplement. And the stories that I hear from patients or people who've taken it, it's astounding. people are saying that, hey, I take it and my nails are stronger, my hair's thicker, my skin is brighter, my joints feel better. I mean, these stories are endless. I mean, I was visiting my mom in Orange County a few weeks ago, and she was making breakfast, and she goes, Tony, my hair's getting thicker. You don't think it's that collagen that you gave me, is it? And I'm like, are you taking it every day, Mom? She's like, yeah, for the last few months. I'm like, it could be.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I take it more or less every day. I take it from a brand that we work with called Bubs. It makes a great product. And, I think part of the problem is that you have people that are not necessarily the best science communicators online that'll see something, they'll take a product like collagen, maybe they'll get paid to promote it if they're influencers, and they'll promote it as this, ideal protein supplement that should be, should be used as an all-purpose protein. But right, and collagen is not necessarily an ideal all-purpose protein because it is not complete in the sense that it doesn't contain tryptophan, and it's got pretty low levels of leucine, which is important for muscle protein synthesis. But it's still, it still contains some leucine, right? And it's still, first of all, for one, if we can count the protein that we ingest from beans and rice, right? Like, of course, we can count the protein that we ingest via collagen, but then it has all these other benefits, right? Yeah. You're getting glycine, you're getting hydroxyproline, proline.
Yeah, and I think that's the way I look at it. Is you have to look at it not as your protein for the day, but as a true supplement, as something that may help. But I agree. Like if you're truly following your macros, then I would not count that as, I had this much protein. Like it's not the same. And
yeah, but it's great for skin. There is, as you said, mounting evidence for its ability to support skin health, skin appearance, texture, hair, nails, all that stuff.
And there are 5 types of collagen, and we're only talking about type 1 that promotes the hair and the skin. There's type 2, that's muscles. You've got the type 3, that's joints, and so some of the collagen supplements contain all 3. In which case, that's where you get people who go, "Wow, I've had these joint issues, and man, it feels so much better now." I haven't looked at the science regarding muscles and joints and all that, just because being a plastic surgeon, I'm really focused on the skin. But that I would find very interesting too. Do you have people who've got chronic joint issues and fibromyalgia and stuff, and you put them on collagen, are they going to feel better? It makes sense that they just might.
Yeah, definitely worth a shot. I take it. I take it because I have chronic low back issues. I am interested in things that I can do that can improve my skin appearance, and texture in my hair. It just seems like a no-brainer to at least try it, because also our ancestors used to consume, when they ate animal source foods, they would eat nose to tail, right? Yeah. And there are parts of the animal that are rich in collagen that we just don't eat anymore because it's not part of the Western palate. But you could look to other cultures and they consume bone broth, they consume, all kinds of parts of the animal that are rich in collagen.
Interestingly, though, and I'm a fan of bone broth, I think it's great and it's a great source of collagen. But interestingly, if you ask, does that improve the skin? There are no studies that show that taking bone broth improves the skin. But there are no studies that show that it doesn't improve the skin.
Right,
I couldn't find any studies on it at all for the skin.
Yeah.
So my guess is that it probably does. Somebody hasn't done that study yet. My guess is if they did, we would probably see some pretty nice results.
Yeah, it's important to recognize that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
And that's the problem now, is you may have a physician who's like, if you say, yeah, I think bone broth can be great for your skin. They go, well, where's the evidence-based medicine to prove that? And I'm like, well, there's no evidence-based medicine not to prove it either. Doesn't mean it doesn't work. Yeah. So, it just makes sense. And if you see that collagen supplements themselves do have a lot of science to support them, then you would have to assume that another source of collagen like bone broth would as well, once those studies are done.
There you go. Going back to sugar, because you said that it's like one of the major things that people should be looking out for and reducing their consumption of. What are the top sources of sugar that you think people should be able to identify?
Well, the number one thing is when you look at people's diet, and I'm not teaching you anything here, but that's for sure, 20% of the standard American diet, of the calories in the standard American diet, are sugary drinks.
Whoa.
20%. So whether that's soda pop.
I didn't realize it was 20%. That's a big proportion.
That's what I saw in one report. Showed 20%.
Whoa.
Yeah. So whether that's soda pop or energy drinks or fruit juices, it's a lot. And so, for me, what I try to encourage people is that we know that sugary drinks are a huge cause of excess, basically wasted calories, essentially. We do know that with that added sugar, that's obviously very unhealthy for you in many, many different ways, not just for your skin. But I also know that it's very addictive. You know, I grew up in the middle of Michigan. I had this weird dichotomy of diet where I had my parents who were Korean, and so we would eat a lot of fish, a lot of rice, a lot of kimchi, a lot of, you know, fermented foods and like garlic and stuff. And then I would go out with my friends, we'd eat McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and all that. And it's interesting because, you know, when you look at that, it's like the society is so focused, our society is so focused on these types of sugary drinks that people take that really what I try to encourage my followers, I have a lot of followers who are middle America. They follow me because, oh, he's that funny doctor on TikTok who gives plastic surgery advice and stuff. If I could just get them to, instead of drinking 3 cans of soda pop a day, to drop to 2, and then maybe eventually 1 and stuff. I mean, these are big, big wins for some people who have never heard of your podcast or my stuff. And like for them to, they don't even realize how bad it is for them. And so to just drop down their consumption even a little bit can be, these baby steps can really, I think, add up. And, and that's kind of with my book. That's one of my focuses, is try to get those people who wouldn't necessarily follow a holistic health practitioner, because maybe that message is one that they just, it's kind of foreign to them. Oh, but they'll follow that funny guy on TikTok and now he's written this book, let me check it out. And it's like, yeah, maybe I should drop how much soda pop I drink. Maybe I should eat a little more fruits and vegetables and eat the rainbow and stuff like that. So
yeah, I love it, man. If you can use humor as a Trojan horse, then why not? You know, as long as you're impacting people. I was watching a video before you arrived. It was like, you do a lot of reaction videos that are really funny. And there was one, you were reacting to somebody who wants to look like an elf.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah. What was that about? That was one of the weirder videos I've ever seen.
We get a lot of personalities in plastic surgery. I mean, I turn down 1 out of every 5 people that come to see me. I still operate 2-3 days a week, and I think there still is definitely a place for actual surgery. You know, you have people who truly have issues that can only be treated surgically. So, you know, for me, I see somebody, let's say a mom who's had 5 children and she's got skin hanging from her tummy and her muscles are completely separated with a hernia in the middle, you know, then we can really make huge differences. And I would love to be able to tell them, hey, eat these foods and, you know, use this skincare and that's going to make it go away, but it just isn't. And so there are those places where I think surgery is definitely appropriate, but there's also in my field this, it's a lot of it's for clout. Like there are these doctors who are performing these operations and procedures, especially on influencers and celebrities, because they don't want to say no, because they're hoping to gain clout from it, you know, and there's a money aspect too. So it's a field of plastic surgery that I'm proud to be in, but at the same time, I'm not proud of a lot of my colleagues and, you know, some of the stuff that's going on in there. Yeah,
I caught myself randomly. These are not the kinds of shows that I typically watch, but I was like I was doom scrolling on Netflix of all places, and there's a show called Botched, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar.
Is this like a long running show? Because I've never heard of it until this moment, and I put it on. I was watching this. The episode that I happened to put on, I was watching it the first 5 minutes. I was like, there was like this beautiful girl, right? And she apparently had like 20 or something plastic surgeries. But I'm like looking and I'm like, well, you know, they weren't all for naught, because I'm like,
sometimes people have that much and they look fine.
She looked great. But then like 5 minutes into it, after you know, my crush has already been fomented, she reveals that she used to be a guy, and and is now living as a trans woman, and also happens to be a porn star with no intention of getting out of it. And she wanted, like, I was just like, I was so drawn to it. She wanted to have a breast reduction. She had like these huge boobs, and she wanted, like, there was like, she wanted to get like a labiaplasty or something to like
down there
readjust something that was going on down there. And I mean, it was fascinating. On the one hand, I'm very much pro it because people have all kinds of insecurities, and it is. I feel like to some degree, insecurity is innate to the human condition. You know?
It is.
So whatever it's going to take to make you feel better in your skin, by all means, as an adult, do it, right?
Well, and we all want to feel better. You know, there's a feeling that you get if you go to a store and you buy a new shirt and you put that shirt on, you go out with your friends, and that you feel good wearing that shirt because it's new and you feel proud of it and you feel like you look good. There is something like that that's innate in us, and there's nothing wrong with it. And so for me, the way I look at the actual practice of plastic surgery, a couple of things. I mean, the first thing is it's always doing what's best for the patient, period. You know, and I think that's where a lot of plastic surgeons, they lose track. Like in the end, when you stop thinking about what's best for my patient and you start thinking about what's best for my pocketbook. If I don't do it, the other good doctor's going to do it, so I might as well. Those types of things, then you've gone the wrong direction. The second thing is when we do plastic surgery, sometimes people do plastic surgery just to make a change, not necessarily to make somebody quote unquote better. And therein lies the difference. If you're having plastic surgery just to make a change, and especially if it's a lateral change, then is it really worth putting somebody at risk? Because when people ask me, Dr. Youn, if I have this operation, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? I tell them, you can die, and I will do everything in my power to prevent that. But if you're going to go under a general anesthesia, you're going to get cut on, you could die. And so you have to take that into account. And so once again, getting back to that whole idea of using plastic surgery only as a last resort and having the goal being trying to avoid that any way you can.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. In your book, you advance this this novel concept that I've never heard of, autojuvenation. What is that?
So autojuvenation is a term that I came up with because one of the things that I've realized as I have, so I had this patient who had that complication, and it literally many years ago, it sent me on a tailspin. And for a while, I felt so bad, honestly, about what happened to her, even though there's nothing I could have done to prevent it other than just not operate on her. I questioned whether I should quit medicine. I questioned whether I picked the wrong specialty. I questioned whether I had the skills to do what I was trained to do. And so I finally, when I reached rock bottom, I thought, how am I going to help people? And really that's what it comes down to. As if I became a doctor to help people. And I questioned, am I helping people if I'm doing these operations and freaking somebody has a horrible complication? And so I started looking into the writings of alternative health practitioners, because I was never taught nutrition in medical school. I was never taught even skincare in residency as plastic surgeons. We weren't taught that. I had to learn all that stuff myself. And so I spent years learning natural ways to turn back the clock and came up with this idea of autojuvenation. And it really composes 5 specific things. It's what to eat, when to eat, supplements, skincare, and non-invasive treatments. And those 5 things compose the whole basis of autojuvenation. And the fact is that your body has its own regenerative abilities and can rejuvenate itself if you give it the right tools to do that. Okay? And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. They think, I don't like what I'm seeing in the mirror, I'm gonna go get a laser treatment, or I'm gonna go get a facelift, or I'm gonna get Botox. And it's like, no, start with these things first. And the way I describe it, it's like you're building a house. And people who say, hey, I want a facelift, you're looking at the spire at the top of the house. That's a facelift, okay? You want to start with the foundation. The foundation is food. It's what you eat. That's what's going to determine of all of this the most how quickly your skin ages. Now, understanding that, if you eat some great food, it's not going to make your nasolabial folds go away. It's not going to make your crow's feet go away. But if you combine that with some of these other things, you can see visible improvements in your skin that can help you look 5, even 10 years younger. And that's without seeing a doctor or getting any type of treatments.
I love it. I love that you're providing real practical tools for people to essentially stay out of your office.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. And there's a lot of this that people don't realize. I mean, the power of just getting on the right skincare plan can make huge differences. One of the things that I'm a huge fan of is intermittent fasting and the process of autophagy, and how that really is something that doctors, traditional physicians, don't know anything about. And so we have in the book this 21-day jumpstart that we put patients on, where it's very simple, where it's a 3-week jumpstart where you have a collagen supporting diet. First week, week 2 and 3, you add in intermittent fasting. And then we actually added also a component that I call the autophagy diet, and I can talk with you about that. Very basic supplements and a basic skincare plan. And we put them on this for 3 weeks. And then we saw after 3 weeks, how did they look? And it's not like they had a facelift. None of them you look at and go, oh my gosh, it looks like they're their daughter or something. But they had people who would come up to them and go, wow, your skin looks fantastic. What are you doing? We had people who were in the middle of it, and strangers would come up to them and ask them, what are you doing for your skin? Whatever you're doing, I want to do that.
Wow.
And this is literally just skin, diet, supplements, and skincare. That's it.
It's so cool. We can't cover every aspect of your protocol today on the show, but I do want to talk about the autojuvenation promoting foods, because you do mention that in the book. So what are some of those foods?
So one of the things I think that's important with autojuvenation promoting foods is the idea of autophagy. And so putting people on intermittent fasting to help stimulate autophagy, to get that internal kind of recycling process going. And one of the things that we did that I thought was really fascinating is I started learning, okay, are there foods that stimulate autophagy so that when you fast, your body is promoting autophagy, but can you break that fast and still promote autophagy? And so one of the things that we tested was we put people on certain autophagy promoting foods, which are like autojuvenation promoting foods. And these are foods that we found were that healthy fats, like omega-3 fatty acid rich fats, foods like fish, certain cold water fish like tuna, trout, salmon, and then the other healthy fats are the monounsaturated fatty acids, so olives, olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds and all of that. If we put them on those foods, and then the other group of foods actually that seem to promote autophagy are polyphenol-rich foods. And you know what those all are, so you're talking like the green leafy vegetables, you're talking like bright and dark-colored produce.
Coffee.
And coffee,
yeah,
and Earl Grey tea, but coffee, yes.
Earl Grey tea, interesting.
Yes, that's one of them. Oh. So the idea is then is we put people, they intermittent fasted from 8 p.m. to noon the next day, and then for the rest of the day, we put them on this autophagy supporting diet. So basically those healthy fats and the polyphenol-rich foods, and then the next day they would go back to their normal, what we call a collagen supporting or anti-inflammatory diet. So it's kind of this interesting thing. It's not a big scientific study, but we did test on people and it seemed to really work very nicely.
Well, I mean, you're advocating for people reducing their intake of added sugar. You're advocating for a reduction in the consumption of ultra-processed foods.
Yep.
And then to welcome back to the table polyphenol-rich foods and omega-3 rich foods. So, I mean, it's not, with all due respect, it's not like rocket science. It
doesn't have to be.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's making these little changes, and that's what I try to get people to realize, is that I know that there are people out there who, we're friends with who have these like very strict diets and lifestyles, and they're doing cold plunging and they're, eating only these specific foods and all that. That's not accessible for the vast majority of the population. But what is accessible, I believe, is, hey, can you intermittent fast 2 days in a week? Can you, reduce the amount of added sugars that you eat? And what I find interestingly is that I get patients who come to my office and I say, look, if you're going to have surgery, you have to quit smoking. They go, well, I'll quit smoking for surgery. But if I were to say, hey, you have to quit smoking because you could get emphysema or you can have a heart attack, no. But sometimes what motivates them is vanity. And if vanity motivates you to live a healthier life and a longer lasting life, then hey, I'm happy to use that. And so, yeah, a lot of things that we do recommend, they do follow a lot of what you recommend. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is those same things can make huge impacts on your skin.
Yeah, I mean, skin health it's like this, it truly is an underrated litmus indicator of a person's health and well-being. And what we perceive as being attractive, usually it's the reflection of health.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, exactly. And that's part of the book I've mentioned is that, being healthy is being beautiful. Some people think, being beautiful is having big breasts or having long eyelashes and stuff like that. No, the first step to beauty really is health. And that's the goal, is to try to have everybody go in that direction.
But it almost seems like that's a controversial statement to make today, right? Because we've ceased to be able to put empirical definitions on things, right?
Yeah. I think, though, at the same time, and I hear exactly what you're saying, because there's obviously a movement toward body positivity where there's beauty in everybody, and I do believe in that. I think that there are people in our society who I would love, and I'm trying to reach, who most healthcare influencers can't. Because they feel like they're beyond that. They feel like, oh, geez, this is not, I see somebody who's got a 6-pack and they're, surfing on the weekends and they've, are cold plunging and doing all this stuff. And geez, I live in Boise, Idaho, and I work, as a waitress at a truck stop, and what does that have to do with me? And that's what I'm trying to reach, are those people and say, hey, look, you don't have to be that surfer on the beach to be healthy. Just make these simple steps. And there's other things that you can do with mindfulness, with meditation, with yoga and things like that can make huge impacts too. Just take these baby steps there and you will actually see big changes in your skin.
Yeah, I think one of the big problems with the online influencer culture and the fitness community is that we tend to create these echo chambers, right?
Yeah.
And after enough time, we just end up speaking to like minds, people who are already obsessed with fitness and with eating healthily. It's like those aren't the people that you need to worry about, right?
Yeah, I did this video. There was a video that I thought was really sweet. It was a wedding dress. It was from a wedding dress company, and they basically were women who were kind of exhibiting the dress, and they were walking down a runway, and they were each size. So it started with extra small, then small, and it got all the way up to like triple XL. And one of the things I really liked about it is, and this has nothing to do with health, okay? It's just the fact that you have somebody who's a double XL, who's walking with confidence, feeling beautiful. Like, who doesn't deserve to feel that way? And so I put this video out there, and I said, you know, I really like this message. It's just that there is beauty in everybody. And oh my gosh, Max, the hate. People were mad. They're, what kind of doctor are you? You know, that woman is overweight and she's not beautiful. I had actually a physician, a plastic surgeon, who wrote, literally he said that overweight women are displeasing to the male eye and should be hidden from society. They need to lose weight. What kind of doctor are you? And it's like, I mean, I was flabbergasted to the point where I put a reaction video to their comments, basically showing how ridiculous it is. Of course, I know that the person who's double XL has, you know, is not on the right path for health, but she doesn't need me, some internet doctor, to tell her that. But to be able to feel beautiful about yourself, like that's something that in and of itself is healthy.
Yes.
You know, and that's something I think we need to foster. At the same time, like they know that that's not a healthy situation,
right?
And they don't need Dr. Youn on TikTok to tell them that.
Right.
That's not going to change our life.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Beauty is totally subjective. Well, yeah, it is subjective, right? There are
mathematical models of beauty that people have created, but it's kind of, come on.
Yes, But then you have people, I guess, on social media that have just the pendulum has swung too far in the direction where they will claim that, you know, it's totally fine to be morbidly obese.
Well, I think when they say that that you're healthy that way, that's obviously wrong.
Right.
And I think therein lies the difference.
And it's all about, I mean, it really is all about nuance and framing, right? Because if you look at a video, if you come across a video online of a morbidly obese person exercising, well, that's healthy.
Yeah, you encourage them.
You're encouraging, you know, exercise amongst that population. So I just think there's always going to be room for more nuance, more understanding.
I think it's gentle support. Gentle support and trying to nudge people in the direction of health that's really the best that we can do, because it does us no good to hit them over the head with a hammer and say, look, you know, what's wrong with you? Like that's not the right approach. And I think that's where I think traditional medicine has not done well, you know, because I think there are people who have, and Ozempic and all that stuff is a whole other thing going on now. But really, I think in the end, it's taking these gentle nudges to try to get people going the right direction.
Yeah, and to be fair, you can also be thin and be very unhealthy, right? There's TOFI, thin outside, fat inside, where,
I agree with you.
You know, you can have a healthy BMI, you can be technically non-obese from the standpoint of the BMI and still be morbidly metabolically obese on the inside.
Oh, exactly. And I see those people come to my office too, people who they could be rail thin, but once again, you know, you see their health habits are just terrible. And those are also people that you don't want to necessarily bring to surgery. Those are people that you want to help them change their lifestyle. It's tough, but you got to do it.
Yeah, and it's hard to communicate these nuances on social media, right? And you're like an expert at it. You've garnered this massive following, and it's like you probably didn't garner that following with these like ultra scientific, ultra refined messages, but it's like when people look into your content, you know, on a deeper level, and you have long form conversations like this, as you know, podcasts enable, and you obviously you've done such a great job on the book. It's like that's where I think the real message comes out. But then you get, you know, on social media, for all of us, you know, like people have done this to me, where they'll take a thin slice of something I've said on, you know, on a clip on social media, and they magnify it, and it's like, no, we all need to have a little bit more, compassion, understanding.
Yeah, I think for me, it started when the pandemic hit. It was March 2020. I had my office shut down, like all the other medical offices. And I found myself, I promised my employees, I had 10 employees, I said, look, I'm going to pay you for as long as I can. And when I looked at what money was coming in, there was nothing, because we weren't seeing patients, except I was getting a check from Google. So I thought at that point, I'm like, look, as a physician, I volunteered to come into my local hospital if they needed me, but God forbid, if you need a plastic surgeon in the middle of a pandemic to treat pandemic-related patients, it's really bad. So they didn't call on me, thank God. But I started thinking, like, how am I going to help people in this situation? And so in the end, what I ended up doing is I started creating content, not necessarily to educate, which has always been what I did before, but if I could just entertain somebody for 10 or 30 seconds or even a minute and take them out of just this horrible, lonely, scary time, that in and of itself is therapeutic.
Yeah.
And I got after that, and that was when all my content just exploded, and all these people, it's crazy. And I would get these messages from people that just meant everything, where they would say, "You kept me company during the pandemic," and they would thank me. And it's like, oh my gosh, somebody from like Seattle, Washington, who I'm never going to meet, in real life. They send this message, and it's like, wow. And so there's a lot of power there, but once again, for me, it really has come down to trying to encourage people. Like, there's so many people out there who can be negative to somebody who has health issues, who are overweight, but there aren't enough people out there trying to encourage them to make these baby steps to get them going in the ideally the right direction.
Yeah, and you do a great job. And you started during the pandemic? That's when you started?
That was when things exploded. So
Got it.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of TV, and then I was doing like Facebook and all that, Twitter and stuff. But it really wasn't until the pandemic when I started. Honestly, a common friend of ours, JJ Virgin, I was talking with her, and she's like, "Tony, just be yourself. Stop trying to be this surgeon doctor type." And she's like, "You're kind of funny." And I'm like, "I am?" She goes, "Yeah, just put your stuff out there." And that was when it just kind of exploded. And it's been a lot of fun.
I love it. Going back to the Younger for Life protocol, you talk about in the book, you say, if I had to recommend just one supplement, I would start with a multivitamin. Why multi?
Multivitamin, I think, because we know that the food that we eat today, the produce, is not as nutritious as it used to be, and this is something you have covered, in great detail. There was a study that looked at all the produce, or a lot of produce, between the years of 1950 and 1999, so 49 years, and they found of this 6 different nutrients that the produce today, and this was back in '99, have less than 50 years before, and those include vitamin C, iron, and protein. And so for me, I think the multivitamin is something, you cannot supplement yourself out of a bad diet. This is something that you have taught. But at the same time, I think it can only help. And so that's something for me when I look at supplements. So we recommend taking a daily multivitamin. Once again, not in exchange for a healthy diet. I recommend an omega-3 fatty acid supplement. Recommend a daily probiotic, recommend an antioxidant, ideally kind of like a mixture of antioxidants, and then ideally collagen. And that's really part of the protocol. It's a very simple, straightforward supplement protocol. All of these I feel are proven to work. There's other things people may talk about with NAD and stuff like that, but those are not the basic ones. I think those are harder for people to get on. If you're a biohacker and you want to try it, then by all means.
Yeah.
But the vast general public, harder to get those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm home left to my own devices, I definitely prioritize and optimize for nutrient density. And so I don't personally, when I'm home and I'm eating and I'm adhering to my routine, I don't necessarily take a multivitamin, but I definitely see the value in it when I'm traveling. So when I'm traveling, I always, in my backpack, I take a bunch of packets of AG1 with me, which is like a great multivitamin.
Oh, yeah.
It has all kinds of, it's vitamins, minerals, and the vitamins that it contains, come in they're not the synthetic forms. They're like the natural forms, like methylfolate, methylcobalamin, etc. And when I'm traveling, I really feel like I reap the benefits of having that sort of like nutritional insurance.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I, unfortunately, am the opposite. Because I travel, I get lazy and I don't want to pack all this stuff. So I try to pack the vitamins and the supplements, but sometimes I forget, or sometimes I'm just like,
Dude, you look into I literally take my backpack when I'm traveling is filled with supplements.
Oh, is it really?
Well, yeah, and I'm not like a over the top supplement guy. I'm not one of these biohackers that takes 1,500 supplements, but I travel I take these packets of protein powder that I buy from Whole Foods so that I can keep my protein intake up. I got my AG1 with me. I recently found a brand of and I forget the brand name, but it's single serving packets of creatine, because before I would travel, I wouldn't want to take a jug of creatine with me, and I wouldn't want to put the creatine in a powder because you travel internationally with some white powder.
Oh yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah, you can't do that. So I take that with me now. I literally carry a backpack filled with snacks and supplements.
I was doing a segment of the Rachel Ray Show where we were doing a treatment for hyperhidrosis, excess sweating in the armpits. And one way that you can determine how much you're sweating is you use cornstarch and iodine. So you put cornstarch in the armpit, and then you wipe it with betadine, or basically iodine, and if it turns black, that's where you're sweating a lot. So I had this big box of cornstarch in my bag, and I went through security, and they took that took it away. Oh yeah, they're like, "What is this?" It's like this huge box of white powder. Like, well, it's cornstarch, believe it or not. Like, no, they took it away.
Yeah, I mean, it gives me the sense of like comfort, even when I'm away from home, to have those things with me. It makes me feel really good.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Once again, I should do that, and sometimes I do. It's just there's that part of me as traveling that you're going out to eat, and like I forget to bring the supplements with me sometimes, and I just don't end up taking it, and then I bring it, and it's so.
Yeah, but I think it needs to be underscored that with a nutrient dense diet, I mean, you really shouldn't, like, there are minimal. I think it's important to take a minimalist approach generally as your default, but then to use supplements as supplements, right? Not replacements for whole food, which
but I did look at, there was a study that looked at 70 different diets, and they just found that to study whether any of those diets would prevent any type of a nutritional deficiency based off the RDA recommended dietary allowance and stuff, and found that all of those fell short.
Wow.
So that's the only thing. Now, once again, I'm sure the quality of the food that you're eating is potentially different than what you get just at a normal grocery store, but still, that's why I'm a believer in supplements, but I too, like you, I'm not the biohacker that's taking 50 in a day and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, definitely not. What about skincare? So this is something that you've talked about, and my skincare routine is, I mean, when I say minimalist, even that's an overstatement.
So a lot of guys are like that.
Are that? Yeah.
Water and bar soap, and that's it.
Pretty much. I mean, if that. I don't actually even use. I don't feel the necessity to use soap every day if I rinse my face. But yeah.
There's probably. I mean,
am I screwing up?
No. I mean, I think so. With the soap part of it, we have gone overboard over the years. One thing people don't realize is our skin does have a microbiome, just like the gut. And so, there used to be back in the 90s and 80s where people would wash their face and then they would use an alcohol-based astringent, and you put that on your skin and your skin feels so tight and clean, but you literally have just killed off all your good bacteria. So there is a microbiome on the skin that functions kind of similarly to the microbiome of your gut and can really impact the health of your skin. And so all of that kind of overly aggressive skincare can be very a net negative for your skin in the end. So yes, just using water and not a whole lot else, there are reasons why that's actually not the worst thing. But there are things that you can do that can really help to prevent the aging process and even slow it down. And so, part of what I recommend, very simple skincare routine that anybody can do, literally takes 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes at night. Anybody can do it, very inexpensive. So in the morning, I recommend starting with a cleanser. Cleanser should be appropriate for your skin type. And so if you've got oily skin, then a foaming cleanser is good. If you've got dry, sensitive skin, then a more milky or hydrating cleanser. Second step, and we've talked about antioxidants, is to apply an antioxidant serum like a vitamin C. Vitamin C is you can find that most companies have it. If you want to biohack a little bit, then add vitamin E as well, because the two, vitamin E and vitamin C, are synergistic if used together in their antioxidant abilities, essentially. And then I do recommend a sunscreen. Now a lot of our friends are not huge fans of doing sunscreen, and I see both sides of it. I think, like anything, in life, there's extremes on both sides, and probably the best is somewhere in the middle. So sunscreen, the idea behind that, dermatologists say wear a sunscreen at least SPF 30. If you're sitting in a basement all day, put your sunscreen on anyway.
Overkill.
Yeah. And then holistic practitioners will say, hey, you get up in the morning, you get the sunlight in your eyes, and there's something therapeutic about getting sun. You get vitamin D out of it. So the way I look at it is I see both sides, and I think one of the things that the holistic practitioners don't see is patients who come to see me who have skin cancer, and they have, let's say, a little dot on their nose, and then they go see a dermatologist, they get Mohs surgery, and they come back to me and half their nostril is gone.
Yikes.
Or they get literally a huge patch gone from their forehead, or part of their eyelid is missing. It is horrifying. You do not want to get skin cancer of your face. Doesn't matter how old you are, you do not want to get that. But at the same time, I realize that sun is very therapeutic. I live in Detroit, and man, every February we go to the Caribbean and we get some sun, and it is absolutely therapeutic. My wife, she can't live without that. So I think that there's a happy medium there somewhere. I think that to get sun is therapeutic. Obviously, it helps with vitamin D, but at the same time, you don't want to get excessive sun because you do not want to get a skin cancer on your face, period. It can be devastating. Hugh Jackman, he's had multiple skin cancers removed. He's, I think, the most talented person in Hollywood, I believe, and I fear for at some point he's going to have something so bad it's going to truly disfigure him.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, he's Australian.
Crazy.
One of my favorites of all time, Jimmy Buffett, just died of Merkel cell cancer. Oh
my God.
And that's a skin cancer. It's an aggressive form. So, what I recommend really, is sunscreen when you're going to be out, at least SPF 30. Ideally, I recommend a mineral-based sunscreen like zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. But those aren't so good if you're a person of color, because they will create kind of a whitish hue on your skin. So if you're a person of color, if you've got darker skin and that you don't like how that looks, then go with a chemical sunscreen, but make sure that does not have oxybenzone and octinoxate, two very common chemicals in sunscreen that are potential hormone disruptors. So instead of that, go with Mexoryl XL or avobenzone. Those are safe. They were found safe. They don't impact your hormones or anything like that, and they won't leave that whitish hue on your skin.
Do you know anything about the difference of in sunscreens that are available in Europe versus in the U.S.? Somebody told me recently that they have way better sunscreens in Europe.
Actually, Korea is the best.
Really?
They have, yeah. So here in the United States, there's only a handful of actual FDA-approved ingredients that we can use in sunscreen. And unfortunately, those create these issues of, with oxybenzone and octinoxate. They also create the kind of the thickness issues and the greasy feel and all that type of stuff. If you go to these other countries and you try some of their sunscreens, it's like if you put a moisturizer on your face in the morning, you don't feel it at lunchtime. It's just a moisturizer. But if you put sunscreen on your face, you can kind of feel it the rest
all
of the day.
I hate it. I hate that feeling.
So, there are sunscreens that are made specifically for the face that are non-greasy. You just want to try the different formulations, but they're not as good as if you get one in, let's say, South Korea that has different ingredients.
Wow. And they're just not available here? Are they like...
The FDA is just super, super slow. They're really slow in getting these things approved. And there was a celebrity, I'm trying to remember who it was. There was blanking on the name. There was a celebrity actually who's spearheading trying to get some more of these approved. I don't know why the celebrity is doing it, but they're trying to do that. It's been I think decades since we've actually had a new sunscreen ingredient approved by the FDA.
It's insane. It reminds me of in Japan, allegedly they've been using toothpastes with nanohydroxyapatite for years, which apparently has the same remineralization capacity as fluoride. But hydroxyapatite is a component of bone and teeth naturally. Yeah. It doesn't have the endocrine disrupting properties that fluoride has. It's non-toxic. And yet we're just now coming around to it here in the United States. And yet it's like commonplace over there. I was in London recently, and a friend of mine was like, "Can you bring me back some of the sunscreens that they have over there? Because they're so much better than what we have over here." And I was like, "Really?" And apparently it's true. There was like a whole article. There was a big write up in I believe it was the Atlantic about how sunscreens are just so much better overseas.
Yeah. But the interesting thing, in the field of plastic surgery, it kind of goes both ways. There are also products that are available overseas that I'm glad they're not available here, because they're dangerous. So cosmetic treatments and things like that people are doing in Europe and other countries that they just don't have here. Certain types of breast implants and stuff. So I think it goes both ways, and I think that the sunscreen is something that hopefully in the next few years we'll see some new ones.
Did you see this article? It was I saw it on Twitter randomly 2 days ago, where a woman went to an older woman went to Mexico for a breast lift, and she woke up from her surgery and they had put in implants. And it was hugely traumatic, and she's she was traumatized by it. And it's like this.
I chuckle because this is something I hear almost every day.
Really?
And it's funny if it wasn't so sad. It's just, I see this all the time. It's called cosmetic tourism, and so or surgical tourism, where people are going to other countries to save money, to have surgery done, and they end up, some of them just get incredibly horrible results.
Whoa.
And the problem is, I have patients, I just stopped covering the emergency rooms. For 20 years, I covered the ER at my local hospital, and we would have people who would fly to Dominican Republic. They would have these big operations, and they would come back to the United States still with drains sticking out of them.
Whoa.
And so they would need to have these drains out. And so then because they don't have a doctor here of getting a doctor that will do it, they just go to the ER. And now you're getting the cost of an ER visit, you're getting the cost of, them having to evaluate. I mean, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to basically treat somebody who's a post-op patient who went overseas to save money to get a procedure done. And it's maddening because you don't know the quality of some of these doctors, and it's scary for these patients.
Yeah, super. I'm just Googling this article that I found because I just thought it was like terrifying. This poor woman, something happened. I don't know where I saw it, but yeah, it was like this surgical tourism thing where this woman.
We see that all the time, and there are stories of people who are women who go to get, let's say, buttock enhancement, and they get breast implants put in their butt, not actual buttock implants.
No way.
Yeah. There's stories of that. There are people who've had surgeries where they go for one operation and they wake up, they've had something else done to them. It's scary. Now, there's a lot of botched work going on in the United States as well. The difference that I tell patients is that if you're overseas and something bad happens, if you don't speak the language in that country and you end up in the hospital, how scary is that going to be for you? Yeah. And at the same time, your United States health insurance is not necessarily going to cover your cosmetic surgery complications in a different country. So now you're going to have the cost of that they're obviously going to bill you for. So yeah, I mean, it's scary. I mean, you really don't want, the two things you never ever want to skimp on and go for the cheap is sushi and plastic surgery. Those are two things.
Yeah, I like that. Wow.
We should cover the evening skincare routine before we get lost, because we talked about the morning. So morning is cleanse, antioxidant, and then sunscreen. Evening, super important to cleanse. Okay, if you only wash your face once a day, Max, and that's fine, do it at night, because you got to get rid of the day's worth of grime and dirt and buildup and pollution. Then you want to apply, ideally, an anti-aging cream. The one I usually recommend is a retinol. That's a derivative of vitamin A, very proven, very safe.
What does that do?
So retinol hasn't been tested as much as its prescription form, which is Retin A. Retin A has been used in dermatology for decades. It can thicken the skin, the dermis of the skin. So we talk about how collagen gets thinner. That can actually thicken it. It can reverse fine lines. It can reverse age spots. And it can actually reverse early pre-skin cancers.
Whoa.
So in people who have, let's say, a history of skin cancer, I do recommend that they go to their dermatologist and ask them for a prescription of Retin A. You won't know what it reverses because it just won't show up, but it may help. And so that's prescription. But if you don't need that, if you don't have real thick skin, you don't have age skin like that, then a retinol is over-the-counter strength. Got it. And that's really all you need to do. Cleanse your skin at night, apply a retinol. If you want to throw a moisturizer on top of that, that's fine. You don't have to, but you can if you want. And technically that's it. So you don't really have to do tons of things. And then if you can, once or twice a week, maybe exfoliate your skin by using a scrub, using like a alpha hydroxy, like a mild peel. And really that's all you have to do. And we actually did a study where we put people on that very simple skincare regimen, people who haven't really been doing much for their skin. And we put them on that, took 2 minutes a day, and then we looked at photos of them 2 months later, and then we took a survey online to see how old did these people look, or older or younger, and we found they looked about 5 years younger just by consistently doing that skincare routine.
That's amazing. I love it. Yeah. Validation for my habit as a nighttime showerer. I'm not a morning shower. I like to clean myself before I go to sleep, so that I can get into my bed clean.
Yes. Yeah. My wife will not. If we're out doing like hiking and stuff during the day, she would be so upset if I went to bed without showering.
Oh yeah, it's gross.
Well, it used to be when I grew up and I went to the bars, like everybody smoked in the bars, and so you would go out to the bar and you would come home reeking of smoke, and my wife's like, yeah, you got to take a shower.
Yeah.
And then you shower and you can literally, as the water hits your hair, you can smell the smoke coming off of you.
Vomit. Ugh.
So different than today.
Well, I just want to go back to like the sun exposure, because I mean, would you say that it's important to know your own personal risk profile and just have a responsible relationship with the sun?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important, because in the end, we know that the sun can be our greatest friend and our greatest enemy. Right. Okay. And so getting up in the morning, looking at getting the sun in your eyes, making sure that your circadian rhythms are in the right order, essentially. Also, once again, there's that therapeutic aspect of it. We go days and even weeks sometimes without sun in Detroit. I mean, it is really difficult at times. But at the same time, you have to realize that the sun damages your skin. Even a little bit of sunlight damages your skin. And I think like anything in life, there's a risk-benefit ratio that you're dealing with here. So the sun will damage your skin with the UV rays. I talked about the different causes of aging of the skin, and inflammation and oxidation being two of them. Well, the sun will damage your skin by both avenues, so you can get actual free radical production by UV damage. That will create free radicals, and you can get inflammation as well, and it can actually damage the DNA of your skin. That damaging the DNA is what in the end leads to skin cancer. Now, interestingly enough, you may find that, hey, I know somebody who drives a truck and their left side of their face has more spots and their left hand has more spots than the right side of their face. So our windshields will actually block. There are three types of UV rays. There's UVA, B, and C. UVC rays are rays from the sun that don't really penetrate the ozone layer, so they're not really an issue. UVB rays are rays that will burn your skin. And UVA rays won't burn your skin, but they go deeper into your skin to create DNA changes. Okay? So the car windows will actually block UVB rays. So you can, even if you're like, you're lighter colored skin, you can drive all day without sunblock on, and you're not going to get a sunburn, but you can get the UVA rays, which do penetrate those windshields and your windows, and that will cause premature aging. That can cause potential skin cancers in the future.
Wow. It's actually, this is something, it's a peeve of mine to get to be in the sun through glass. Like to have, like if I'm ever in I was at an event recently in London where I was, it was like, during lunch, all the attendees of this conference that I was at, it took place in this tent where the sun was allowed to come through, but I knew that the glass was blocking the, so it was just like a UVA bombardment, and it just made me really uncomfortable.
Well, and that's too, if you talk about people who are darker skin, they go, oh, I don't need sunscreen because I don't burn. Well, yes, because the melanin in your skin will absorb those UV rays and protect your skin from getting burned, but those UVA rays are still penetrating your skin. So people who are darker skin can still get skin cancer.
Wow.
They can still get premature aging and all of that. Once again, skin cancer being the big concern.
But also, like, having the skin of a newborn, like to aspire to have the skin of a newborn on your face throughout life, I mean, that's not really a physiologic, I mean, like, there's probably a lot of cost associated with striving for that as a goal, right? If you're not allowing sun on your skin, we generate vitamin D when the UVB rays hit our skin. We generate nitric oxide when the UVA rays hit our, so there is some good to come, like an important benefits to come from allowing the sun to hit the surface of our skin. Is there not?
Yes, and I think that's where, once again, I differ a little bit from my dermatology colleagues where, they're completely covered head to toe, and then they're taking their vitamin D supplements, maybe, if they believe in that.
It's kind of like an analogy that I would draw. It's like these like vegan zealots that you encounter online sometimes. They promote this idea that we should all be walking around with the LDL ApoB levels of a newborn. And I'm like, well, to get those levels, which are not physiologic for an adult, right? You have to like
extreme
lifestyle change, not eat any of the most nutrient dense foods on the planet, which happen to have some saturated fat in them. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's a cost benefit.
Exactly. And
where I think there's more cost than benefit in that situation.
No, and I think that's the whole thing with the sun, is that's what you want to kind of weigh, So like I said, for somebody like me, it's February, we're going to the Caribbean. I'm so glad that I am. It's like I'm not going to have the sunblock on me all the time. I'm not going to be completely covered. But at the same time, I also understand that I'm not going to get burned. Like there's no way I'm going to get burned and get all that type of damage too.
Do we know, do people with darker complexion, people of color, do they have lower risk of melanoma, of skin cancer? Do we know that?
In general, yes, because the melanin will protect your skin. So there is a level of protection there, but we do know that you can still get burned. I mean, I still get burns occasionally, even though I'm using sunblock. Now it's crazy. I get burns on the top of my freaking head because my hair is getting a little thinner.
Happens to the best of us.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so there definitely is some protection there. But once again, people who have darker skin have to they need to realize that that's not complete protection. So super, super important.
Got it. It's like the person who's just been skinny their whole life eating junk food, thinking it's not at some point going to catch up to them.
Yeah. I mean, you may look healthy there, but then you get a calcium score, and next thing you know, your calcium score is up the roof, and you're like, well, geez, I look like I may be healthy because I'm not overweight, but you're not on the inside. Yeah,
you can't just go by appearance alone.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Super interesting, man. Well, I feel like we've just like scratched the surface, but I'm excited for people to check out your book. I know you've put a ton of work into it. It's a thick book too, thick with 2 C's. It's got a lot of good content in it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, really what I wanted to do is create a book that anybody could read and take specific step-by-step instructions to be able to turn back the clock naturally. So you read it, you take these very simple steps. You know, this is not crazy stuff that you have to do these insane things or spend all this money, but you do these little steps and you give yourself a month, you know, even 3 weeks sometimes is enough to do like a jump start like that, where you can see huge changes in your skin and hopefully look in the mirror and say, wow, I really love what I'm seeing. Because I mean, don't we all want to do that, where we look in the mirror instead of being horrified, like sometimes I wake up like, oh, I'm horrified, but actually be happy, like, wow, this is great. And then to get those compliments from people makes all the world.
Yeah, and I think it's also a really novel entry point for people, because as you say in the book, you like to use skin as a point of entry for lifestyle change. People aren't always concerned about these like long-term abstract, which shouldn't be abstract at all, but this idea of long-term health, right? They care about vanity. And so if that's the point of entry that you got to use, if that's the Trojan horse, then by all means.
Well, it's interesting too, because if you ask like a holistic alternative health practitioner, you go, hey, what's the best way for me to get beautiful, healthy skin? They'll go, fix your gut, fix your gut. You ask a dermatologist, they'll say, put sunscreen on and use a retinol. You ask a plastic surgeon, they'll say, get laser treatments and get a facelift. And reality is that if you combine the best of both worlds, you fix your gut, you know, you use the right skincare products, you take supplements, you know, you try some intermittent fasting, then all of that actually, in the end, the best way is combining traditional and the alternative in a true integrative approach. And that's what I wanted to bring out here. I don't know of any other book that has done that for skin aging and in that manner before. So
love it, dude. Well, thanks for writing it.
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.